Have you ever struggled with negative thoughts? Do you sometimes feel like a harsh inner critic is undermining your self-confidence, or maybe you're trapped in relentless worries, weighed down by stress, or even experiencing prolonged depression? At times, life can be shrouded in a pessimistic cloud, making it hard to see the light ahead. If you find yourself in these descriptions, then you also recognize the powerful and sometimes devastating impact of negative thoughts. They creep into our minds, cloud our mood, strain our relationships, and drain our energy. These thoughts weigh down on our health, our work, and truly every aspect of our lives. We know these thoughts are harmful, but overcoming them is not as simple as just replacing them with positive ones. I understand that feeling. If you're new to the world of Stoic philosophy, you might not know that I once found myself in a very dark place within my thoughts. Throughout my youth, I battled with binge eating and depression. My mind became my worst enemy. There were times when I wondered if life was even worth continuing. But then, little by little, I began to learn how to turn my mental struggles into strength. Today, I want to share with you 6 methods that will help you not only face but also conquer negative thoughts. With all sincerity, I hope these methods will serve as a guiding light to help you find peace and clarity on your journey through life. 1. Use mindfulness to build self-awareness. Becoming self-aware and mindful is both important and beneficial, yet it's something people often overlook. Mindfulness is the ability to look inward and have a clear picture of your thoughts, passions, goals, values, and more. However, achieving this is far more difficult than one might imagine. If awareness is not just about awareness, it is about having a higher consciousness of awareness. With this heightened awareness, you can interpret your thoughts more clearly and identify why you may feel the way you do, uncovering the meaning behind your own emotions. Mindfulness, a practice rooted in meditation, is not merely awareness, but also a way to change our relationship with our thoughts and emotions. Instead of letting them control us, we can learn to become objective observers, standing apart and watching the flow of ideas and feelings in our minds. This approach is like standing on the riverbank, calmly watching the flow of water, not rushing in but quietly observing what is happening. Similarly, negative thoughts or everyday stresses are just like waves, and we have the choice not to be swept away by them. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "Unhappy am I because this has happened to me. Not so, but happy am I, though this has happened to me, because I continue free from pain, neither crushed by the present nor fearing the future." This quote emphasizes that events themselves do not determine our mental state. It is how we face and react to them that matters. Practicing mindfulness provides us with a means to manage and control our reactions to the things that happen in life, especially negative thoughts. This not only helps build self-awareness, but also enhances our ability to overcome unpleasant emotions more effectively. A practical example in modern life is the stressful work environment. According to the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, in 2013, up to 74% of employees reported feeling increased stress at work, and 14% even admitted that they had, at times, wanted to hit a coworker. This stress stems from various environmental factors such as bullying, workload pressure, or lack of support from colleagues. These negative emotions can push us into impulsive reactions, or worse, lead to negative actions that damage relationships around us. This is where mindfulness becomes incredibly useful. When we practice mindfulness, we don't just stop at recognizing that we are experiencing negative emotions. We also can pause, analyze, and gain deeper insight into the root cause of these emotions. For instance, in a stressful work situation, instead of immediately reacting with anger or feeling overwhelmed, a mindful person can stop and observe their thoughts. They may realize that, instead of being angry at their colleague, they are reacting to a deeper fear of imperfection or failure. This awareness allows them not to be swept up in negative emotions and to act more calmly and thoughtfully. Many studies show that people who practice mindfulness are less affected by negative images and even have better emotional recovery after being exposed to stressful situations. This demonstrates that focusing on mindfulness practice not only helps control emotional reactions but also creates a safe distance between thought and action. This is the foundation of freedom in Stoic philosophy, where one is not dominated by fleeting emotions, but instead chooses to act from a place of reason and clarity. Mindfulness helps the rational part of our brain take over and handle situations more wisely. This is not only a victory in battling negative thoughts, but also the first step toward a peaceful and balanced life. As we become more mindful, we don't just prevent negative emotions from controlling us but also open the door to discovering deeper values and goals, helping us live in the way Stoic philosophy always emphasizes, living by reason and virtue. Ultimately, mindfulness is not about rejecting emotions but about changing how we face them. Like thoughts and emotions, we too pass and change. But with mindfulness we can stand firm in that flow, not being swept away by negative thoughts, and instead learn how to master ourselves, live a meaningful life and achieve true freedom. 2. Identifying negative thoughts. It is normal to occasionally feel anxious, but sometimes these anxious thoughts are not helpful. The presence of negative thoughts not only reduces our joy in life, but also prevents us from enjoying the present moment. To free ourselves from the power of negative thinking, the first important step is to learn how to recognize them. Observing and identifying these thought patterns gives us a greater ability to understand and control them, rather than being swept away by an endless spiral of negativity. When we analyze the thoughts in our minds, it is crucial to learn how to label them. Stoic philosophy advises us to stay alert and objective when facing these thoughts, because thoughts are not the truth. They are merely our subjective interpretations of reality. This objectivity helps us realize that not every thought is trustworthy, especially negative and distorted ones. Negative thought patterns can manifest in various forms, and if not recognized, they can disrupt the balance in our lives. One common form is jumping to conclusions. This happens when we make negative assumptions about a situation or other people without clear evidence. It's like we believe we have a crystal ball and think we already know the future, even though the actual event has not occurred yet. From here, negative predictions make us unnecessarily pessimistic and anxious. Catastrophizing is another type of negative thinking. Instead of realistically considering possible outcomes, we think that the worst-case scenario will occur. This not only distorts the truth, but also makes us fear life's challenges. Excessive worry about the future creates unnecessary pressure and robs us of the chance to enjoy the present. Another negative thought pattern to recognize is overgeneralization. When we apply a negative experience to our entire life, we deceive ourselves into thinking that bad things will happen repeatedly. This creates a sense of inevitability, making us feel helpless and lose faith in positive change. For instance, a small failure in the past might be exaggerated into a series of future failures, making life feel overwhelming and full of pressure. Additionally, labeling yourself in negative ways is a common cognitive distortion. When you give yourself negative titles like bad at math, poor communicator, or useless, you are creating a negative feedback loop. These labels not only affect how you perceive yourself in the present, but also diminish your confidence in future situations. This self-labeling harms self-esteem and hinders personal growth. Another type of thinking many people fall into is the should statement. Thoughts that start with "I should do this" or "I shouldn't do that" often create unnecessary pressure and lead to a sense of failure when you don't meet self-imposed expectations. These should statements, if not carefully examined, can become a burden, making you feel like you'll never meet the standards, which in turn fosters pessimism. Emotional reasoning is another cognitive distortion where we believe that our emotions are proof of the truth. For example, if you feel anxious, you may convince yourself that something bad is going to happen, even though there's no concrete evidence. This only increases anxiety and negativity, trapping you in a vicious cycle. Finally, personalizing and blaming are also common thought patterns. This happens when you blame yourself for things beyond your control or believe that everything that happens is directly related to you. Applying this mindset not only harms you, but also erodes your ability to view situations objectively. These cognitive distortions are like ghosts in the mind, preventing us from seeing the truth. However, it's important to remember that thoughts are not reality. When you start identifying these thought patterns, you will see their power diminish. Labeling and observing them from an objective standpoint will help you take better control of your life. As Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Once we understand this, we won't let negative thoughts control our lives. Do you recognize yourself falling into any of these negative thought patterns? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's discuss how we can overcome these mental challenges together. Next, replace negative thoughts with more realistic, positive ones. This will be a crucial step in helping you control your mind and build a life full of optimism and peace. 3. Replacing negative thoughts with more realistic, positive ones. We all have moments when our thoughts turn negative and sometimes we get stuck there. This can be common, but those negative thoughts don't have to dominate your emotions or actions. By learning simple, effective strategies to shift your mindset, you can see and focus on the positive by reshaping those negative thoughts. One of the most powerful ways to do this is by replacing negative thoughts with more positive and realistic ones. Start by examining the evidence that supports or contradicts the negative thought. This helps you challenge them objectively and rationally, rather than being swept up in a spiral of negative emotions. For example, when you feel anxious about not being able to complete a task, instead of dwelling on the thought, "I can't do this," you can pause and ask yourself, is it true that I can't do this? How have I dealt with similar situations before? By questioning yourself, you may realize that despite the difficulty, you've overcome many challenges in the past. This helps you open a new door to see the current situation not just with fear but with a deeper understanding. This skill, known as cognitive restructuring, helps you cope with negative thoughts by guiding you through constructive self-questioning steps. First, ask yourself if your thoughts are accurate. Sometimes, we tend to exaggerate problems or fall into the habit of catastrophizing situations. Next, consider what has happened in the past. Have those negative thoughts prove true in previous situations? You may have faced similar circumstances and realized that the fear at that time wasn't as bad as you predicted. Another important element in replacing negative thoughts is deliberately challenging them. When you recognize that your thoughts may be distorted by anxiety or fear, you can look for alternative explanations. This doesn't mean being blindly optimistic, but rather opening yourself to new possibilities, without being confined to a single negative perspective. For example, instead of thinking, "I'm going to fail," you can choose a more neutral thought, like, "I don't know if I will succeed, but I will do my best." This neutrality gives you the space to act without being weighed down by the fear of failure. It is especially important to develop self-compassion during this process. When faced with negative thoughts, we are often harsher and more critical of ourselves than we would be when comforting a friend. If you find yourself stuck in negative thinking, imagine that you are talking to a close friend who is going through a similar difficulty. How would you comfort them? Apply that same approach to yourself instead of sinking into self-criticism. But reminders like, "I may not know the outcome, but I'll do my best," can help ease your inattention and create emotional balance. Another factor to consider is focusing on the positive aspects of life. When negative thoughts arise, they often overshadow the good things you've achieved or have. Sometimes these negative thoughts grow stronger because we overlook the blessings around us. It's like holding a magnifying glass that enlarges the imperfections and ignores the good things that exist. To counter this, ask yourself if there is anything positive that could come from the current situation. Cautious optimism, rather than extreme thinking, will help you approach life more calmly and wisely. Many studies have shown that a single cognitive restructuring intervention can help people reduce the negative thoughts that contribute to anxiety. By regularly challenging distorted beliefs and replacing them with more realistic perspectives, you will gradually build a positive and resilient mindset. While changing your thinking in this new way may be difficult at first, over time and with practice, positive and rational thoughts will come more naturally. When you learn how to challenge negative thoughts and replace them with more realistic judgments, you not only find confidence and inner peace, but also develop the ability to control your emotions and actions. This is how Stoic philosophy teaches us to face difficulties, not by denying reality, but by always seeking a brighter path, a better possibility amidst life's challenges. In our intellectual exchange, do you have a story about replacing negative thoughts with positive ones? Share your experience and how you've applied Stoic philosophy to overcome difficult moments in your life. Thanks for your engagement. It helps us push this content out and spread the message together. Just a smile or a positive thought can make a big difference. And hey, are you thinking about leaving? Don't. That would be a big mistake because what's coming next is even more groundbreaking. Trust me, you'll want to stay because we're just getting to the best part. The secrets I'm about to share with you can change the way you approach life. So, hang in there, we're about to take things to the next level. For practicing acceptance rather than trying to avoid or deny negative thoughts. Do you struggle with negative, intrusive thoughts that you can't seem to stop? Do you often find yourself battling with your emotions or feeling guilty when you can't overcome sadness, anger, pessimism, or other difficult feelings? When we experience negative emotions, our typical response is to try to avoid these feelings in any way possible. You might attempt to deny your emotions, become numb, or engage in activities to distract yourself. In doing so, you may find that you only magnify those problems, feel ashamed, or cope in ways that are harmful to your mental health and overall well-being. In Stoic philosophy, facing negative thoughts and emotions is not a battle against yourself, but rather in alignment with the nature of life. A crucial part of Stoicism is the ability to accept reality and understand that there are things in life we cannot control. As the philosopher Epictetus said, we suffer not from the events in our lives but from our judgment about them. It is not the negative events that cause suffering but how we perceive and react to them. Trying to control and suppress negative thoughts is like pouring fuel on a fire. The more you try to extinguish it, the more it flares up. The effort to stop negative thoughts can be seen as the opposite of mindfulness and awareness. When you constantly tell yourself, don't think about it, what you're doing is continuing to focus on those negative thoughts, making them stronger. This is known as the thought rebound phenomenon. Psychological studies have shown that the more you try to push away negative thoughts, the more they return with greater intensity, causing more harm to your mind and soul. Instead of fighting against thoughts, a more effective solution is to practice acceptance. This is at the core of acceptance and commitment therapy. When you learn to face what you cannot control and focus on living in the present moment, mindfulness encourages us to accept the existence of negative thoughts without judgment. By doing this, you no longer let thoughts control you, but you learn to recognize that thoughts are just thoughts that don't have to define or control you. As you place less emphasis on and value negative thoughts, they gradually lose their power over you. Imagine your mind as a calm, clear, and tranquil lake. Each time a negative thought arises, it is like a small stone being dropped into the lake. The stone creates ripples that spread across the surface. Our natural reaction is to try to push away or control these ripples, hoping to restore the lake's calmness. However, resisting them, much like thrashing in the water, only makes the ripples stronger and more widespread, causing our minds to become even more chaotic. Instead of fighting negative thoughts, we should accept them. Just as the lake will naturally return to its stillness if we don't interfere, so too will our minds. If we allow negative thoughts to come and go without trying to block or resist them, they will gradually fade. Inner peace emerges when we learn not to overreact to fleeting emotions. Ignoring negative thoughts doesn't mean being indifferent or neglecting the situation, but rather not allowing them to control our emotions and actions. Mental peace will return, just as the lake becomes calm again after the stone has sunk to the bottom. In Stoic philosophy, acceptance doesn't mean submitting or giving up in the face of difficulty. Rather, it requires us to recognize that some things are beyond our control and trying to control them only brings suffering. Epictetus also said, some things are up to us and some are not up to us. Our opinions are up to us and our impulses, desires, or versions, in short whatever is our own doing. Recognizing the boundary between what we can change and what we must accept is the true power of wisdom. When you face negative thoughts, practice acceptance, letting them pass without judgment, and gradually you'll realize that they don't have the power to control you. A perfect example of practicing acceptance is when we face fear. If you've ever felt nervous before an important event like a presentation or an exam, the instinctive reaction is to try to push the anxiety away, telling yourself, I can't be afraid, but the more you do this, the more frightened you feel. However, if you practice mindfulness, accept the presence of fear, and remind yourself that this emotion is natural, you will find that the fear becomes less overwhelming. It doesn't disappear, but it no longer dominates you. After learning how to accept and face negative thoughts, an important next step is learning how to embrace feedback and criticism. This is another aspect of life that is often beyond our control. Remember, facing criticism or feedback should not make us anxious or angry. Instead, we need to learn to accept it as a necessary part of growth. 5. Learning to cope with feedback and criticism. How do you react when faced with criticism? How can we deal with criticism without letting negative thoughts consume our minds? This is one of the greatest challenges we face in our daily lives. Especially in today's competitive and judgmental world, the ability to face negative comments calmly and mindfully is not only the key to protecting inner peace, but also a path to personal growth. Stoic philosophy, with its powerful teachings on controlling emotional responses and self-discipline, offers us valuable lessons on how to handle such situations. The ability to process negative feedback and criticism is not just a matter of psychological self-defense. It also reflects our maturity and understanding of life's nature. Life is never free from judgment. Others may criticize us unfairly, point out flaws, or reject us for various reasons. However, what we can control is how we react to those criticisms. It is here that the distinction between what we can control and what we cannot, one of the core principles of Stoicism, becomes vitally important. Instead of allowing others' criticisms to shake our self-esteem, Stoicism teaches us that our reactions are entirely within our control. This idea is similar to cognitive behavioral therapy, particularly when we build the skill of assertive self-defense. This doesn't mean avoiding or ignoring criticism, but rather restructuring our thinking and learning to confront the negative thoughts that arise from rejection. For example, a common technique in cognitive behavioral therapy is using hypothetical conversations with a therapist to practice asserting oneself in the face of criticism before applying this skill in real-life situations. This skill helps us strengthen our resilience against the emotional pain that criticism can bring, especially the automatic negative thoughts we often encounter. Thoughts like, "I'm not good enough," or "they're right, I'm useless," often surface when criticized. But through practicing assertive responses, we can counter these thoughts by reminding ourselves that these comments don't necessarily define our worth. They are just one person's opinion, not an absolute truth. Stoic philosophy emphasizes controlling our minds and emotions in the face of external influences. This means that instead of focusing entirely on criticism, we can choose to ignore the negative thoughts that arise. A prime example of this is preparing assertive responses for stressful situations. Not only does this help us feel more confident when faced with criticism, but it also turns real-life encounters into opportunities to practice important lessons. Criticism, when received calmly and thoughtfully, can become a valuable lesson that helps us improve and mature. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters." Criticism will no longer be a personal offense, but just a part of life, something we cannot fully control. However, how we face it and how we train our minds to maintain inner peace is something we can fully master. When confronted with criticism, we have two choices: to let those words haunt our minds, or to use them as an opportunity to practice patience and serenity. Stoicism teaches us that strength lies in our choices, and when we learn to ignore negative thoughts, we become more resilient in life. Thus, criticism is no longer our enemy, but a tool to refine ourselves and live a more meaningful life. 6. Using a diary to track your thoughts. You may have heard about journaling before, but it's not just about writing down your thoughts. It's a powerful tool that can help you gain clarity in life and boost your emotional well-being. But have you ever wondered how recording your thoughts can change the way you face negative emotions? In Stoic philosophy, journaling is not just a pastime but a practical method for seeking inner peace and mental discipline. The power of a journal doesn't just lie in the act of writing, but in the deep understanding it brings. When you sit down to write your thoughts, you begin a journey inward, exploring the dark corners of your mind and uncovering negative thoughts that you may not usually notice. In reality, these thoughts might silently guide your emotions without you realizing it, leading to anxiety, self-doubt, or even depression. But journaling will help illuminate these hidden areas, and you'll start to see that it's your thinking, not external circumstances, that truly affects your mental state. As Stoic philosophy teaches us, it's not what happens in life that matters but how we perceive and react to it. This is clearly illustrated by the example of Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who emphasized, "Men are disturbed not by things but by the views which they take of them." When you begin journaling your thoughts, you get the chance to reflect on your emotional reactions, just like analyzing a date scenario. Perhaps you felt anxious or rejected, but by recording your thoughts you'll realize that negative self-talk like "I'm not good enough" or "people won't like me" was the real cause of your sadness. Once you identify these thoughts, that's when you can replace them with more positive and rational ones. This is the wonderful process that thought journaling brings. You won't just stop at recognizing negative thought patterns, you'll be able to change them. Over time, these irrational thoughts will be replaced by more positive and realistic ones. For example, instead of telling yourself, "I'm sure I'll be rejected," you can think, "I'll enjoy the conversation and not expect too much from the outcome." This isn't just a change in language but a profound shift in how you face life. Recent scientific studies have also proven that journaling not only helps reduce stress, but also improves sleep and even boosts self-confidence. This aligns perfectly with Stoic thought, where daily self-reflection is an essential part of mental training. Writing about challenging experiences not only helps you process them constructively, but also helps you accept and face more difficult emotions. That's why in Stoic philosophy, self-awareness and emotional management are key to achieving inner peace. Imagine that whenever you're confronted with negative thoughts, instead of being swept away by them, you can calmly write them down, analyze them, and thus control your reactions. This is the power that thought journaling brings, not as a method of avoidance, but as a way for you to stand up and take control of your emotions. You will no longer be a victim of negative thoughts, but become the one who holds the power over yourself. Stoicism encourages us to accept what is beyond our control and focus on what we can change. Journaling helps you see this boundary more clearly, where you understand that your emotions don't depend on external circumstances but on how you choose to respond. You will see that every negative emotion has its roots in irrational thoughts, and once you can identify and change them, you will overcome them. So, if you're looking for an effective way to improve your emotional well-being, journaling may be the answer. Don't hesitate to try it and see how it can help you. The great Stoics did this, and the results brought them not only peace but also the strength to stand firm in the face of life's challenges. So, we have explored together how to fight and overcome negative thoughts by applying Stoic philosophy. However, we cannot control what happens around us, but we can fully control our reactions. By ignoring negative thoughts, you prevent them from dominating your mind and your life. Instead of being swept away by worries and insecurities, focus on what you can change and improve each day. So, have you ever applied Stoic principles to deal with negative thoughts? Do you feel that ignoring those thoughts helps you feel more relieved? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like and share it to spread the spirit of Stoicism to more people. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming videos, and check out other videos we've suggested at the end. See you again in the next journey of exploring Stoic philosophy. If you found this video helpful and want to learn more about how Stoicism can help you lead a peaceful life, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. I'd love to hear how you deal with negative people in your life. Share your experiences in the comments below. And let's continue the conversation about how we can all grow stronger in the face of negativity, because I can make a huge difference in your life. And remember, wisdom is life itself. See you soon, young Mark Aurelius.